Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Action Coach Entrepreneurship series. Glad to have you join us and really looking forward to adding value and making an impact through the series that we've gone through. If you are new to the series, welcome for the first time. These events happen every second Thursday of the month. So for the rest of the year, make sure that you diarize accordingly. We've had some really interesting topics already. We've covered off on unemployment. We've covered off on human rights. We've covered off on falling in love with your business again. And today we're going to tackle the issue of youth and your business. So for those of you that are new and haven't seen me before, my name is Harry Welby-Cook. And together with Peter Scholes, who's also on the session today, we brought Action Coach to South Africa 15 years ago. And we have a team of coaches all around the country focused 100% on adding value and coaching businesses to become more profitable and more sustainable. And in putting this series together, we want to make sure that we impart as much value, some perspective, some thoughts, so that you can go out and make exactly that happen for your business, a more profitable, more sustainable business. So today it gives me great pleasure, and let me just get him up here for your benefit as well. We've got Trevor Clark joining us from the battered province of KZN. And I say that because if you can run a business in South Africa, I think you've done really well. But if you can do it in KZN, you're probably the best business people on the planet with the challenges that they've been. Trevor's been with us this year, going on 13 years already. So don't let his youthful looks deceive you. He ran a very successful marketing and advertising business in the Middle East for many years, and did the opposite of what the perception is. The perception is we're losing all our great talent, and no, Trevor Clark is one of many that came back to bring the talent to add an impact and a difference here. And, you know, I think when we look at youth and we look at business, there's all sorts of these things that go on in our head. You know, unemployment is high, but youth unemployment the highest. We think youth are entitled. We think you can't get good talent. We worry about the education system. And Trevor, together with a wonderful guest that we've got today as well, are really going to help us gain some perspective from how do I, as a business owner, how do I, as an entrepreneur, serve my clients better, run my business better, but combine that with the youth and the energy and the excitement, and then do good for everybody and create that win-win. So Trevor, thanks for joining us. Really looking forward to your session today. And guys, we're going to make it interactive. Use the chat box and let's make sure that you get as much out of today as possible. So thanks, Trev. Over to you.
Stunning. Thanks, Harry, and thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be part of the broader community across South Africa. And yeah, we're doing a lot in our provinces, but obviously with technology these days, we're working with people all over the show. So, and thanks for calling me youthful. I don't think I've been referred to as that in a while. So, but yeah, so nice to meet those of you, a few of you on the call that I've met before. Nice to see some friendly faces and names there, and obviously a couple of people that I haven't met. So as Harry said, my name is Trevor Clark. I'm a business and executive coach within the franchise. I've been, almost 13 years now going strong with this business, and loving every minute of it. I was overseas for a number of years, as Harry said. I never actually immigrated or left the country. I took a two-year contract in the Middle East, which then, when you're having fun doing what you do, it ended up being 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, eventually 8 or 9 years. I was living in Dubai at the time. It was like, wow, it's time to get back, but I wasn't keen on raising my children in any other country rather than South Africa. I'm proudly South African and wanted them to grow up as South Africans. And met Harry back in 2009. I was looking at business opportunities. Harry and Peter had recently launched the Action Coach franchise in the country, and we're advertising for coaches to join the business. And I liked what I saw. I was quietly intrigued, and I looked into it more and more, and I just fell in love with this business. I thought, wow, to build a business by helping other people build their businesses. I think we're in a very privileged space to do what we do, and I have a lot of fun doing it. You're helping people grow businesses and helping people grow people's careers. And so thanks for the opportunity to talk, and hopefully I can add some value on your businesses. I imagine most of you on the call are business owners. And if you don't mind, guys, when we're having sessions like this, it's always nice to get your feedback. So please use the chat box. And if I ask any questions, or if we bounce any ideas, or if you, Harry, or myself, please put some details in the chat box. Tell us a bit about yourself. You're more than welcome to use these as a networking opportunity as well. So put a link to your website, to your Facebook page. It's nice that we can get to know each other on the session. But in the chat, if you don't mind, let me know who here, do you own the business? Are you the owner of a business? Are you a manager in a bigger business? Are you looking for a job? Are you an employee of a business? Just tell us a little bit about yourself in the chat. It's nice to know who we're talking to, so that we can obviously make sure the content we give you is useful to you. But yeah, so Harry invited me to talk today. And I was excited about the topic for two reasons. I'm passionate about hiring young people generally. Youth, I think, are the future. I mean, it goes without saying, that's the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. So, but if they don't get the start that they need, if they don't get the first job to get them up and running, if they don't get the mentorship and the grounding that's going to help them do great things going forward, then we're doing people a disservice. We're doing ourselves a disservice by not nurturing the leaders of the future. So I've always been passionate about hiring young people, but in particular in my businesses over the years, I've found some of the biggest impact that's been made on the companies is the new ideas, new energy that comes from hiring people younger than yourself. So I've always been passionate about that, and Youth Month is a lovely time to be trumpeting that. But the other thing I'm always passionate about is helping entrepreneurs build their businesses. But important for me is building businesses you can sell, because too often we find there are businesses out there that don't live beyond the owner. And I'm very passionate about legacy businesses. Legacy businesses meaning a business that can outlive you, a business that you can one day sell to other people, a business that maybe you can list on a stock exchange, a business that you can franchise one day. A business that's open for possibly a management buyout where your staff can buy the business from you, allowing you to retire or do other things. A business you can hand over to your children. Actually, hopefully don't give it to them, make them buy it from you. I think that's for me as a legacy business, as it can outlive you. So those are the two things that I'm really excited about. And that's the kind of coaching work that I love doing. So talking around the youth in business is a lovely opportunity. As Harry mentioned, I've got a guest that'll be talking to us as well, a company called Youth Capital, and Crystal Duncan-Williams, who's a part of Youth Capital. She will be sharing some insights on that business, and I'll hand over to her a little bit later. And Crystal, thank you for joining us. Actually, Harry, maybe if you don't mind making Crystal a co-host, so that or pin her, so that when we do hand over to her, people will be able to connect with her nicely as well. But yeah, so I guess a couple of parts that I was thinking of in terms of structuring the ideas I'd like to share with you. The first one on my mind is, regardless of youth, let's talk business and generally, and the idea of why hire in the first place, why grow a team? Because obviously we as coaches across South Africa, we meet all sorts of business owners, one man, one woman businesses, maybe with a small sort of, let's call it sole proprietor kind of businesses with a small team, as well as big businesses, big teams. We work in the executive coaching space as well, working with big corporates. So the main thing, let's talk around small, medium-sized businesses for a second. And I just want to talk around the importance of hiring generally. And it's a question we like to ask people early on is, do you own a business or do you own a job? And what are your goals over time, this business that you have? And obviously there's a real difference between owning a business and owning a job. For us, the definition, and those of you working with an action coach, you'll know the definition of a successful business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. That's an important distinction. Commercial business, a real business that ticks all the dots and makes your customers happy. You're delivering value. That's a commercial business. A profitable business, we've got to be making money each and every month. Do we have a marketing and sales strategy in place? Are we running our finances properly, that we are profitable each and every month? A business that works means it is systematized and there's checklists and procedures, and we can get a predictable outcome every time somebody gives us money. Is a business that works, but importantly, a business that works without you, meaning we've got a team in place that is running that business for us. And that's such a lovely definition, a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. If you own something like that, that means you actually own a business. It's a sellable entity. Whereas what we find, a lot of people out there in the entrepreneurial space don't actually own a business, they own a job. And it's a bit of a cliche, but you've heard it. Job is J-O-B, which stands for just over broke. And we find there's too many business owners out there that are paying themselves less money than they were being paid when they actually worked for somebody else. We find there are business owners out there that are often working longer hours than anybody in the team. The staff are going home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the business owner, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, is still on the computer trying to get stuff done. So we've got to start changing. We love helping people change that psychology. Now, we're never going to get a business working without us. If we don't get the systems in place, but importantly, if we don't hire the right people to be running that business for us. So sometimes changing the psychology there as well. So I think it's an important question to ask yourself is, what do you want? What are you trying to build here? Are you trying to build a sellable business that's going to work without you and team members running it? Or you're building a job? Now, there's no right or wrong. You know, there's some people that can do very well just having a job kind of a business, but make sure that you have investment strategies and other things in place for one day when you can no longer work. Because what we're also seeing a lot in business is business owners burning out. It's one of the biggest reasons for business failure is we find one or two people are trying to do the work of many. And we often find business owners that aren't experts in all these different areas are having to become expert in areas, often having to do tasks that they're not good at, tasks that they do not enjoy. And we need to get into that habit of getting the right people in place to do those things for us that we don't enjoy. So there's a couple of points for me that there's a logic to hiring more people. Okay, so firstly, there's only so much one person can do. You know, so if we want to scale a business, we are going to have to get more people in place. You know, there's only, for instance, 8 working hours in a day, depending on how long your working day is, 6 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. So there's only so much you can achieve in that day. There's only so much you can charge for your hours. So in theory, every one person you hire should be freeing up possibly 8 hours of productivity per day on any one hire. Now, obviously, if you hire somebody, they might not be as good as you on that role. You might, depending on the level of skill and experience of that person and how much training they need, but any one hire should be freeing up big amounts of productivity. So leveraging through people basically is a key logical reason to hire more. There's a lovely quote, we all know Richard Branson, who founded the Virgin Group. One of my favorite quotes of Richard Branson is he says, "You do not build a great business, you build a great team, and they will build a great business for you. If we don't build teams, you're not going to grow that business." And importantly as well is, are we considering succession planning? I've mentioned already a business that you can sell. Too often we'll find that we're meeting business owners that are leaving succession planning too late. We all think we're going to live forever. We all think we're going to be young forever. We all think that our energy is never going to run out. And life happens, you know, we find people get ill. We find people's needs change. We've often had people come to us saying, listen, I want to sell the business, but they suddenly need to sell the business urgently. We had a gentleman come see us recently. His wife had got a new job in New Zealand. He wanted to follow her to New Zealand, but needed to sell the business because his whole life was built into the business and the business wasn't sellable. And he had to make a tough decision. You know, do I sell the business now for nothing? It was basically like shut the business down. Or was he willing to spend a year or so getting the business sellable, getting the systems in place, hiring people that can run it for him and then sell it later? So we need to be ready to have that business ready to sell. So it's a key part, or handover, and those other examples I gave. So hiring the right people and a good team is a key part of succession planning. So we know there's a lot of logical reasons why we should hire teams and we should grow teams to get this business working without us. So why don't people hire? Why are people really resistant to hiring? And we see this often. We meet business owners out there that are often sometimes scared of hiring. We often find scared of hiring and maybe don't know how, haven't been trained on how to hire well, haven't been trained on how to recruit and find the right candidates. We often have people that affordability is an issue. The company's not profitable enough, so we don't hire. And obviously that's a key thing. That's why I mentioned we've got to get the marketing and sales right first and get our profits up so we can afford to get people on board. And if you are stuck, I mean, obviously we're not talking about profitability today, but if anybody is stuck in that space, reach out. We've got coaches that can help you in that space. But often we find people that have been burnt before. They've hired badly, put the wrong person in the wrong role, been held ransom by underperforming team members, CCMA cases, have mismanaged team members. We meet a lot of business owners that say, no, I had a big team and it was awful. I had staff members stealing from me. I had unethical stuff happened, or I just had non-performing staff and I ended up losing a lot of money through that. So often being burnt before is something that stops people hiring or takes away people's confidence on growing the business. But the reality is, if we don't grow a team, we aren't going to grow a business. So we need to change the psychology, and we need to do some work to start changing that. There's another key one I'd like to share with you as a concept of what we call the entrepreneurial ladder. A lot of you might have come across this before. The idea behind it is business owners, we grow a business by growing a ladder. We become more proficient in the skill of being entrepreneurs, because most of us start our jobs as students, right? Or we start our careers as a student. We have a job where we're in university or college or possibly school. A lot of we stop learning at some point, but we start in schools and we learn a trade, we learn a skill. So that's the first kind of rung of a ladder. At some point, we get a job, and we often are underappreciated of how lucky we are to have a job, right? Because having a job, somebody else is paying us money and teaching us a skill at the same time. And there are people that spend their whole lives in a job and get varying levels of success and happiness from a job. And you get some people that have what Michael Gerber calls the entrepreneurial spasm and decide to work for themselves, right? We're not so happy in our job. We decide that we can make a lot more money and work a lot less hours by working for ourselves. So we resign and we set up a company from home and become what we call self-employed. So that's the third rung of that ladder, which is an exciting time, right? The business is yours, you make the decisions, the money goes straight into your pocket. And it's a fun time of being able to do things your way. But at some point, we either have a big vision and we start hiring a lot of team members, or we find we hit an earning ceiling as a self-employed person, so we start hiring more people. And this is where it gets tricky for a lot of businesses, because the next rung of that ladder is what we call the manager. And not every entrepreneur, in fact, the minority of entrepreneurs are good at management. A lot of entrepreneurs don't like management. We find a lot of business owners out there that are ex-corporate, and we even see people that in the corporate space would manage teams of hundreds of thousands of people, now have a small, medium-sized business and battle managing 10, 20, 30 people. I personally think there's a different psychology to running your own team when it's your own money and you sign surety on the business and you've borrowed the money to fund the business, to when it is somebody else's. And suddenly we run away from the management stuff. We haven't put systems in place and things like that. And that's where a lot of people get stuck, is either don't like the management stuff or aren't good at it, aren't trained on how to manage. And people can't reach the next rung of that entrepreneurial ladder, because the next rung above manager is what we call owner. And an owner is a totally different space to be in, because an owner means there's a team in place doing the work for you. You don't have to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By and large, as an owner, it might mean that you're only popping into the business a couple of hours a day or a couple of hours a week. Possibly you might own a business that you hardly are ever at. There's a lot of work to be done, because we've got to get the systems in place, and then we've got to hire a manager that's going to run that business for us. And not all of us know how to do it. Not all of us have the confidence to do that. Just going higher up that ladder, the next step above owner is investor, where you might be investing in multiple businesses, some that you are skilled at, some that you have no involvement at all. But the top rung of that entrepreneurial ladder is what we call the true entrepreneur. Somebody who's making money with other people's money, other people's ideas, investing in the stock exchange, investing in real estate. There's lovely wealth that you can create through entrepreneurship, but generally where people get stuck is that transition from self-employed to a manager, and the next level above to business owner. And it all comes down to getting systems in place and then getting the right people to run that business for us. It's a key process. So, we've got to understand this sort of stuff. Have we learned the skill of running a business? And that's what stops a lot of people growing and not reaching their full potential. So there's Brad Sugars, who founded ActionCOACH 28 years ago. The company's been going globally.
Next year, 30.
Good grief, 30 years. And it was just the other day we did the 25-year anniversary in Australia, and now we're hitting 30 years. But But Brad has a great saying around this. He says, saving a wage can cost you a fortune. And I think, would anybody agree with that, right? Too often we find the owner of a business whose value to the company is 3, 5, 10,000 Rand an hour. And we find the owner of the business is doing tasks that could be outsourced to a 300, 400, 500 Rand an hour resource. And then we wonder why the owner is not getting to the top level stuff. The owner is not getting to get out to industry networking events. The owner is not doing personal development. The owner is not doing strategic planning. The owner is not doing top level marketing work because he or she is buried under the bookkeeping or buried on the tools of the business. So we've got to get these people in place where we can have other people doing the work so that you as the owner can do the top level stuff that's going to add significant value to the business, and possibly even freeing up some free time to spend with your families, to get to the gym, to get into hobbies, whatever it might be. But it's not going to happen if we're buried in the business. So another key one that I just want to touch on before we get into the youth in general is just the importance of hiring generally. If you don't mind, Harry, I'd love to hand back to you. Guys, for those of you that haven't met Harry, started up an initiative, who could grief, about a year or so ago, a concept called Everyone Employ One. And a lot of it was around the shocking unemployment rate in this business. And Harry started gosh, it's actually become a bit of a wave that's getting going, and people are adopting it in other countries, in Lebanon and all sorts. Harry, if you don't mind, just take a couple of maybe 2-3 minutes and tell people a little bit about the Everyone Employ One initiative, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Trevor. And if you want some more information on that, go to our YouTube channel, ActionCOACH Southern Africa, and pretty much every single coach in the business is talking about that from some different angle. But I believe truly there is only one challenge we have in South Africa. And when I say that, people look at me as if I'm mad and go, no, we've got corruption and we've got crime and we've got education and we've got all these challenges. Well, the reality is no. I think we have one challenge, and that challenge is unemployment. Because when you give somebody the privilege of a job, you give them choice. You give them choice to stand up for themselves and take ownership back and not be reliant on others, and therefore not have to, out of desperation, do desperate things. So if we look at the unemployment stats in South Africa, everybody got very excited because we had a 0.4% reduction in unemployment the last quarter. The reality is more than a third, almost 35% of people are unemployed in South Africa. And if we take it to those disillusioned, that have given up looking for jobs, it's almost half the population, around 45, 46%. And if you look at youth unemployment, we're looking at almost 70%. Now, how are we going to fix a country when people at that magnitude don't have a job? And we look to government to solve the problem. Well, government actually needs to get rid of people, because we know through the parastatals and through the government departments, there are too many people employed. Okay, so they're not going to do it. Well, maybe the corporates should do it. We've seen that for decades, and we'll see that for decades more. As organizations innovate, as technology becomes better, we will cull jobs in the corporatized kind of market. Well, then how do we employ people? And if it is our biggest challenge, who's going to do it? And the good thing about that is it's you and me. It's every single one of us. And it's not to look at the masses at a time. It's to say, well, if every one person, every one business employed just one person. Now we've got around 3.5 million registered businesses in South Africa. Not all of them are operating. Some of them might be small, some might be very big, but 3.5 million businesses. And even if we take the informal sector, which are not registered, let's say there's still 3.5 million businesses out there, even if it's a one-man band. Well, if every one of us employed one person, we would cut unemployment by 50% by one person. So if I do one and you do one and the neighbor does one and every other business does one person, we will eradicate unemployment faster than any government in this country is going to do anytime soon. because to create 3.5 million jobs is damn near impossible. But you and I can do it. And that's really the power of saying, well, never mind what everybody else is doing, what can I do? And as Trevor said with that wonderful quote, saving that wage can cost you a fortune. Every single one of us in business are doing things that are low value tasks that somebody that doesn't have a job could do. And if we all do that collectively, we can do much more than any government will ever do. So that's the thinking. Everyone, employ just one. Thanks, Trevor.
So thanks for that, Harry. And maybe if you don't mind, put maybe a link to some of that material in the chat. So if anybody wants to find out a bit more about the initiative and sign up to it, it'll be great. But how's that for a message, right? If every business in South Africa hires just one person, we've halved the unemployment rate. That's something that businesses just like yours can. We have what, 64 people on this call. That's 64 jobs right there. If everybody would just take on one person right there, so help get some movement behind that. So that was my intention, just to and hopefully for those of you that know you should be growing or could be growing more if you hire, hopefully I've done a bit in terms of just giving you that little nudge to get, whether it's at 1 or 2 or 3 extra people in the business, because remember, it depends on your goals. Some of you just want to get a little bit bigger than you were last year. Some of you might have goals to become national conglomerates, list on the stock exchange, franchise your business across the world. So we all have different goals, but we're going to achieve it a lot more by having people help us get there. So obviously, whether you want to hire, there's different, depending on the jobs in your business. There'll be some jobs that will suit the youth specifically. Some you might need people with more experience, more maturity, depending on the degrees, the skills needed. But let's talk about young people in particular. So we know we've got to hire people to grow the business. We've got to leverage the talent. Why specifically young people? Now, there's obviously many different reasons around it. Some of the top ones that popped out for me, I had a lot of experience in this. I mentioned earlier my business overseas. We had some amazing young talent come through the doors that would just bring some amazing fresh ideas, fresh perspective into the business, and really transfer, like freed up. I mean, at one point I remember being buried in the business, working 12-hour days and getting a right-hand lady that literally transformed my life. I started getting home. The business was doing even better, but I had a young, energetic person just literally taking over all the stuff that I wasn't so good at. It wasn't even so much the stuff, because we're all good at some stuff and we're all rubbish at other things. Recently, a couple of years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago, we started an internship program at my office here in Durban. And, the internships have always been, the cliche of internships has always been for big companies, and it's a big thing in a lot of industries, the accounting industry, the fashion industry, advertising agencies, the big global agencies. They have fully fledged internship programs where every year they bring on, whether it's 10, 20, 100 interns every year straight from the universities and colleges. And those interns obviously get their first 1 or 2 years of experience. It's their first job. They get to use their skills and they get real world experience. And the bigger companies always have the luxury of internships because they have an HR department and often have a systematized internship program. And one of the CETAs years ago, CETA started off an internship program. Sadly, apparently it's not running at the moment, but we're hoping they'll launch it again, where there's even government-sponsored internship programs, but a lot of us even do our own interns, where you can just find young graduates that are looking for that first job. So we started the program 5 or 6 years ago. Pre-lockdown, we'd run it for about 4 or 5 years. Every year, we'd bring on a young graduate that would join us into our admin department. Now, this is a small business of 5 or 6 people, could easily have an intern, and we found there was plenty of work to keep the lady very busy. And every intern, at the end of the internship, we would help her find a job, and most of them actually ended up getting work with clients of ours. But this is the deal with internships, as we found, and what blew me away is, because I meet all the time, I meet people that say, young people are hard work and millennials this, and you get all these kind of stereotypes about young people. And what I found is I was actually blown away by the candidate or the caliber of candidates we used to get, especially in South Africa. If you consider the unemployment stats, we teach a group interview process where you can actually interview 4 or 5 candidates at the same time. And every time we were interviewing interns, we had a tough position where we actually had too many good candidates. There's such talent in this country, and there's energetic, skilled, passionate, driven young people that have come out of colleges but often are, especially in some of the underprivileged communities, people that can't get to interviews, people that don't have a network and able to get access to get invited to the right interviews, people that don't have internet at home, people that don't have transport and can't even get to interviews, or specifically the numbers don't lie, there just aren't the jobs out there. So we found when we were hiring interns, we just had the most amazing candidates and interns that really made substantial impact even to small businesses like ours. So firsthand, we can't say the talent isn't out there in this country. It is. There are great people, but often people don't know how to look for it and don't know how to find the right talent. We don't just take the first available person. You need to do a thorough recruitment and screening process to make sure the right ones get in. And that's the deal with internships, right? There's a deal. You get a low-cost employee for a year, 2 years, however long your internship program is, maybe 6 months. So you get somebody that is not a huge HR investment, but they're going to give you their service, their ideas, their passion or commitment for however long. But the deal is we have to give meaningful employment to that intern in that time. Don't just throw them in a corner and give them rubbish work. Give them stuff where they're going to be stimulated. They're going to learn their chosen industry as well as possible. And then importantly, at the end of that internship, either we hopefully absorb that intern into our own organization, or you've helped them get their confidence up, get their skills up, help them build a CV. Now they go back into the market and now suddenly they have a much higher self-worth in particular, but importantly, they're now much more valuable and they can command a higher salary. But that's what a lot of people just need. I spoke about that entrepreneurial ladder, is people just need that first job just to prove themselves. Yes, they've got the paperwork, whether it's a high school diploma or a tertiary qualification or some step. So we've seen amazing success and with clients as well, just on the internship programs. Often we find business owners often have head trash around young people or the youth, to use that word. I think the main thing is changing mindset. Some people look at it as an obstacle. I think we should be looking at it as an opportunity. It's a cliche, but the youth are exactly that. They're our future leaders, our future taxpayers. If we are not mentoring, it's the future taxpayers that are going to be taking care of the roads and taking care of the hospitals and the police force and all the infrastructure that has to be paid for in your retirement. Hopefully we've groomed the right people to do a good job of the custodians of this country going forward. So yes, you're going to be hiring people with less experience, but the upside of that, you're going to get a lot more energy. You might be hiring somebody with less skills, but the upside is they'll probably be cheaper or a lower salary. You're going to be bringing a fresh perspective into the business, younger ideas. You're going to be getting different generational perspectives when you're around the table. But importantly as well, it brings in diversity. There's so much research out there where they see how the more diverse teams achieve so much more. And obviously, typically we look at diversity in terms of ethnicity or gender and having more diverse teams around it. But importantly, that diversity also means age gaps. We want to have young, middle and youth and old in a team, because there's the diverse perspectives and ways of tackling a project and insight that you get on any challenge. It just makes you so much stronger as a team. So we need to be encouraging diversity in all levels. And I did mention it earlier, succession planning. The thinking around it is, yes, succession planning. We need to have a team running the business for us, okay, that we can hand the business over. We can maybe have the business running without us and we get passive income from the business when we retire, or we might want to sell the business. Now, you don't always find a buyer on the market to buy your business. A management buyout is often an option where you have teams that are going to buy the company from you. So wouldn't that in itself be an argument that you should be hiring younger people than yourself? Because the chance of hiring older people, they're going to hit retirement age before you. And what's the chance of an older person buying out your company? If you want a management buyout at some point, make sure you're hiring younger people that's going to take that business forward. So for me, those are the main sort of points on perspective from the business on why hire young people. And it's a debate we could talk around a long time, but I'd like to hand over to Crystal and introduce Crystal Duncan Williams. We met a while ago. Actually, it was when Harry was first launching the Everyone Employ One campaign, and they'd come across it, and we had a few discussions, and we've done a few panel discussions together. And the team at Youth Capital is just doing some amazing work in terms of helping young people in the market. I'm going to put a link to the Youth Capital website in the chat box. Actually, I've put it in there now already, so you guys can check it out in the chat. But Crystal, if you don't mind, just let's check your sound. Thank you for joining us. Maybe just say hi and let's see if we can hear your sound okay.
Hi, everyone. I think we're good.
Perfectly hearing you fine. So Crystal, if you don't mind, maybe just a quick introduction to yourself and a little bit more about Youth Capital and the work that you guys are doing.
Sure, thanks, Trevor. And just apologies, I have a bit of a cold. You know, there's lots of germs floating around. So if I sound a bit husky, that's why. But thanks so much, Trevor. Really excited to be here. As Trevor said, we first actually connected with ActionCOACH through the Each One Employ One campaign, which got us really excited at Youth Capital. And since then, you know, Trevor's come on some panels on our side. And I think this is the first time I'm chatting to the ActionCOACH kind of family. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Youth Capital is an NGO. And actually a lot of the stuff Trevor said, I resonated with as a project lead of a small team of an organization that's only about 4.5 years old. And I was a sole employer of one for a long time. So I feel what it's like to now have a team of 4 and almost 5 people, and how much I suddenly have free time. And it's amazing. So hire people, highly recommend it. So yeah, we at Youth Capital are an incubator project of the DG Murray Trust, and the DG Murray Trust is a grant maker and a funder and an established fund in the South African landscape for, you know, I think going on 50 years now. But alongside their grant making work, they also incubate projects in-house, and they do that to fill what they see are strategic gaps to achieve 3 key focus areas that they've identified. And one of those focus areas is that every young person has their first decent job. And so Youth Capital's mandate was really to address the gap that was that young people's voices and experiences were missing from the conversation. And secondly, that there wasn't a collective and shared agenda for the space. And so with all of that in mind, I spent a lot of the first 2 years, my background is as a researcher, you know, looking at literature and reviewing what research exists around what are the things we really need to shift if we want to tackle youth unemployment. And I'm just going to share my screen for a little bit of my talk, because I want you to look at the action plan, which really guides all of the work that Youth Capital does. And this is, you know, based on research, as I said, but also me traveling across the country and speaking to over 200 young people to try to understand what are the things that get in their way when finding a job. And I think we spent a lot of time talking to young people, and what we really want to start doing this year is speaking to businesses. So I'm really excited to speak to all of you, and I'll flag some practical things at the end of my chat. But what we really tried to do at Youth Capital is to bring together these two sides. So often you have the NGO, civil society working very hard with young people, trying to make them employable, give them skills. And then you have businesses on the other end who are often painted as the bad people who just don't want to hire young people, who don't understand young people. And I think at Youth Capital, we want to try to bring those sides together. Ultimately, we're trying to drive policy change. Because we think that's really where, you know, there are big systemic challenges in the education space and the training space that need to be addressed. But exactly as Harry said, you know, a lot of these big policies are focused at big business, when I absolutely agree with Harry that I think the magic of creating employment lies in the small business sector. You know, as Harry said, if every single small to medium enterprise in this country hired one young person, they would create far more jobs than if we just focus on your very big established corporates. And so I think that's the work that Youth Capital really wants to get into towards the end of this year. And I'll chat about that a bit later. But when chatting to Trevor and preparing for chatting to you today, I wanted to touch on, you know, just one part of the action plan, which is where we look at making job seeking affordable. So you can go onto our website, you can check out the action plan, you can endorse the action plan. We're always looking for partners who read this action plan and go, yes, we fully agree. This is the blueprint for tackling youth unemployment. And my contribution is to point number 9 or whatever it is. No one organization, not even government, can address all 10 society. So I just encourage you to go and read more about the action plan there. I don't want to get into that now, because what I really want to speak about are the findings from our latest report, and I'm going to pop the link in the chat. But we ran a survey, an online survey with young people towards the end of last year to understand what were the challenges that they face when looking for work. And so I don't know how many people on this call are aware of it, but young people can spend up to 1,000 Rand a month on looking for work. And those are the major cost drivers. They are the cost of data and transport costs. So the cost of going to get things certified for an application, the cost of going to the interview, the data, you think, oh, we're doing things online, that should make it easier for people to show up for interviews. That's not always the case. Then there are obviously infrastructure issues around having connectivity, having a smartphone that can even do a Zoom call, all of these things. And so what we try to do in our latest report was to say, these are the challenges that young people face. 8 in 10 young people are having to choose between looking for work or putting food on the table. We had a young girl that was interviewed, I think it was for an IOL article. And she said, I can't look for work this month because I have to buy nappies for my baby. And that's the reality that young people face. And I think often employers might think, oh, well, I got 20 applications and I invited 10 people for an interview and only 5 showed up. Why did the other 5 not show up? And sometimes, sometimes they did just forget. But other times they couldn't find childcare that day. They couldn't borrow the 50 Rand taxi fare to get to your offices to come for the interview. They didn't have the data to send you a message to say, I had an emergency and I had to go to the hospital, so I couldn't come. And then they're too embarrassed to come back to you and say, this is what happened. And so then you just never hear from them again. And so I think it's important for employers to understand these barriers that young people are facing and the reasons why they don't show up for an opportunity, even when one is presented to them. And so in our report, we outline some very practical tips for employers. So the big and very easy low-hanging fruit for anybody who's looking to hire a young person is to go and register on sayouth.mobi. So this is a government platform. It's 0 rated, which means that government foots the bill and young people can access it without it costing them any data. And young people go there to look for opportunities. So advertise your opportunity there. I think the government's trying to encourage everybody to use the platform because then young people have one place to go. We know it doesn't cost them any data. That's an easy low-hanging fruit. The other low-hanging fruit that we practice at Youth Capital is if you invite somebody for an interview, first round, we do it over a Zoom call, or even if they can't do Zoom, we do a WhatsApp call and offer to buy them some data. It costs you 50 Rand, 100 Rand. And sometimes young people will be like, no, I've got a Wi-Fi hotspot, I don't need it. But just offering the young person that just gives them, reduces that barrier a little bit. When they do come for an interview, offer to pay for their Uber, offer to reimburse them the taxi fare, whatever it is. These little things that in the grand scheme of things don't cost your business too much can actually help you find the right candidate, because at the end of the day, you might not find the right candidate simply because they couldn't afford to get there. And so those are some of the small, what I say, low-hanging fruits that we can think of to make it easier for young people to access the opportunities you do have. Then something that's a little bit more innovative, but some people are testing it, and you can read more about it. I don't have the website now, but you can Google Go Mentor, which I'm just putting in the chat. Go Mentor, I've been trialing this for a while, where they use WhatsApp bots to help young people develop their CV, but then also for employers to kind of do a first round matching and sifting through CV process. So, that saves you time and money. Surely it's easier for a WhatsApp bot to kind of do checks and balances for you than for you to have a person sit and go through a bunch of CVs, especially if you have lots of CVs to go through. And it saves the young person. Most young people buy WhatsApp data bundles. It's the most popular form of bundle that young people buy. So, using WhatsApp channels, I think these are some of the practical things that I wanted to touch on when we're thinking about how to hire and recruit young people. And we love ActionCOACH's approach to saying, we need to hire young people. As you said, you can't just check a box and put a young person in a chair next to you and give them a computer and think that they're going to thrive. We need to remember that many young people are coming from households where nobody else is employed. They don't know how to show up for work. They don't know how to behave in the workplace. They don't know what work culture is like. And so they really need, if you're going to employ a young person, you need to understand it's going to take a little bit of handholding, a little bit of coaching from your side, but you might end up with an amazing employer at the end of that who's really grown with your business and learned from you and becomes a serious asset. But they do need to have some investment from your side initially. Thanks for Harry for finding the full website there. And then I think, in closing, I wanted to, Trevor, I forgot about this when we chatted actually, in forecasting forward to the work that Youth Capital is looking to do. So very shameless little punt, but we are launching a short documentary on Youth Day. So you can look out for that on YouTube. We're very proud of it. We've never gone into the filmmaking space. So just a little look ahead, and you can hear from young people and hear about how we say the action plan is a practical guide for addressing some of their challenges. But then looking towards the end of this year, the work that Youth Capital really wants to do, where I think this group of people can really add value, is we want to understand what are the challenges you face in accessing government incentives. So there's the employment tax incentive, there's CETA funding, there's BBBE rating, all of these things, incentives that government has set up. And most of the policies around these incentives are really structured for big business. And so what we hear anecdotally from small businesses that they struggle to access these kinds of funds. And so we would love to hear from you. I've put my email in the chat. I'll do it again when I'm done. We'd love to hear from you and connect with you. We're probably going to put a survey together that we'd love to share with you later in the year to understand what are your challenges, and really need your insights to understand the landscape, to be able to put recommendations forward to the government, to say, and to Treasury, they've renewed the employment tax incentive for another 10 years. How can we make this these incentives really work for small businesses, because as Harry said, that's really where the magic lies in creating employment. So I've covered a lot in a short space of time. But thank you, Trevor, for the opportunity. And I'm here in the background if anybody has any other questions. But very excited to have spoken to you all this morning. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal, and thanks so much for your time. Just while we've got you, I mean, we'll, and everybody, if anybody's keen on hanging around, we're going to cover 1 or 2 more topics for another 5-10 minutes, and we'll open up the forum for chat and questions and answers, and please do hang around. But Crystal, one thing, often people debate this definition of what exactly is the definition of youth. From what age? I know there's different definitions. Maybe just give us some insight in terms of.
Sure, I actually just had that question in the documentary now this week as well. And so we define youth at Youth Capital as 15 to 35. That's the definition that I think most of the quarterly label for survey stats will use as well. And the reason is because internationally youth is 15 to 24, and I come from a public health background actually. And there when you speak about youth health, it's 15 to 24. But the problem in South Africa is that because young people have faced all of these systemic issues, they just aren't getting to a state of a thriving adult by the age of 25. And so we've actually broadened this category to buy ourselves more time for failing them. That's what I say. So the government has increased the range of youth because we've actually failed them and we're trying to buy ourselves more time. And it's kind of a catch-22 because we're buying ourselves more time. So that gives us more time, but then we still aren't getting it right as a country. And so when we know a lot of youth programs, government will use 35 as the cap. And we also speak about youth in the range of 15 to 35. I think I would love that one day we spoke about it in the range of 15 to 24 because we were doing better and young people were moving into being, thriving adults by the age of 25.
I think that's good for that. And thanks so much for the work you guys are doing. I mean, we were just blown away when we first met you and that voice for young people. And I think also debunking some of the stuff like you mentioned, because I find it all the time. If I'm helping clients with recruitment and you always get this, the people just didn't arrive for the appointment or didn't phone me to tell me they weren't coming. And the stuff that a lot of people take for granted as common courtesy is obviously who speaks for the people that don't have data, that can't borrow, as you say, not spend 50 Rand to get taxi fare to get to the job interview. It's actually borrow 50 Rand to get to the taxi. And those sort of challenges that people are facing, and these are good people that are really just wanting that start to prove what they're capable of. I've put in I don't know if I've put the right link in there. Maybe just check that, Crystal, because you do have the action plan that we're getting businesses to sign up to.
Yeah, I'll pop that in the chat as well. I see there's a question, Trevor. Do you mind me just taking it?
Yes,
while
please,
I see
go for
it? The difference between the ETI and the YES program. So the employment tax incentive is a tax break. So basically you apply to government and then they cover the PYEI portion of that employer's like salary, so to speak. So the salary that the person gets isn't affected, but it costs you as a company less since you don't pay their tax, if that makes sense. I am not an economist or tax expert, but layman's terms, that's it. And then the Youth Employment Service Program is looking at your BBBE rating in conjunction with using a learnership program. So companies can sponsor a young person, and they had different models, but the model that's come to work the best is a big corporate gets the tax break for paying X number of young people, but that young person actually works for an NGO and has never met the company that's paying their salary. So it's a bit of a weird setup, but those are the differences in a nutshell.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Crystal. And I've put Crystal's email address in the chat if anybody wants to reach out. Dory, I did ask Crystal's permission beforehand in terms of copy action to give out the email address. But maybe, Crystal, if there's other ways that people should follow you, we look forward to the documentary coming out. We will find it. I'll follow your YouTube channel. But if there is,
so I think it just Youth Capital on any of the social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever is your preferred social media channel. You can just look for Youth Capital, and you'll hear all about it. Then it's launching in various places on Youth Day, but then will be on YouTube for anybody to see.
Stunning. So, but we will go to a conversation and Q&A in about 10 minutes. I just want to just leave everybody with a couple of closing thoughts, because the idea is obviously growing a business. Yeah, to grow a business, we need good people to grow that business for us. And obviously, where possible, youth, but it doesn't mean don't hire old people as well. It's what's right for the business. But there's such an amazing opportunity on the youth side. So just finish up the idea just on hiring, and in terms of hiring youth, you're going to get some great insight from Crystal and her team in terms of, and thanks for those tools as well that you shared there, the websites in particular. But I think for me, just talk about, let's make sure we're also hiring better, because yes, is it a young person, a middle-aged person, an old person that we're hiring, that regardless of age, we've got to hire the right person. So how do we hire better? And particularly if we are looking at interns, youth, what have you, let's make sure we get the right people on board for our own benefit as well as for their benefit. So I think for me, a couple of things that we've seen and what I've seen in coaching over the last 12, 13 years is, firstly, we need to break a couple of cliches. And for me, the main cliche and something we hear a lot is, I meet business owners all the time, whether it's people I'm working with or just people out in the market. And we often hear the business owners say to me things like, Trevor, the problem is you just can't get good people. And if anybody's heard people say that, you might have said it yourself, oh, you can't hire, and do even say, oh, in this country, you can't hire good people. And we hear that around the world. We have people in every country say you can't get. Now that's something we've got to tackle that one head on. If you don't, I mean, let's think of, and my response usually when people say that, I'll say, well, let's think of some good companies. Let's name them. Globally, let's look at the companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Facebook, Uber, there's all these amazing success stories. In this country, there's countless amazing success stories of these amazing businesses. So my question would be, let's think of any of those companies. Does that company have good people? Would they become a good company if they didn't have good people? So yes, the good people are out there. So the question we should rather be asking ourselves is, why would good people want to work for you? Because good people want to work for good companies. And have we ever asked ourselves that question sometimes? If somebody doesn't turn up for an interview, is it because they didn't have taxi fare, or did they find out something that they didn't like about the company? Did they get online and visit the website, the Facebook page, the LinkedIn profile? Did they start doing a bit of research and chatting to existing employees of the company? And maybe they found out a few things and this company didn't appeal to. Because remember, 18 players want to play for the A team. So what are we doing? What can we do in our power to make sure this is a company that good people want to work through? So there are, often people also talk about young people, millennials this and millennials that. And yes, there are challenges with millennials, but I'll argue that that's been every generation. Gen X's gave their parents and older people, let's call it, headaches that are totally different. Now, every generation throws new headaches at the generation before them. So that's just a reality of life, so we've got to accept that. But I would argue that, that the things that a lot of, let's call it, whether it's millennials or youth generally, is, because obviously that's why I wanted the definition of youth. So thanks for that, Crystal. Up to 35, we're not talking millennials here. We're talking a number of different generations that still qualify under that. Is what people want actually hasn't changed a lot. You know, for me, we need to look at the business to say, is this a business that good people want to work for? Have you looked at the basics? Have you got the basics right? You know, in our coaching program, we work on foundation issues with companies. You know, have you documented your vision, your mission, your values? That's important stuff for young people nowadays, but it's been important for all people, but young people now will vocalize it, that they're wanting to look at what's the vision, what's the impact that this company is making on the community, what's the dent we want to make on the universe? Have we documented that stuff? Is it an inspiring vision, or is the company vision just to make the boss more money? You know, if that's your vision statement, is to make more money and retire early, what sort of team members are you going to attract to hire? Things like carbon footprint, corporate social responsibility, values systems. Have we documented that stuff? Are we talking about it? This is where we often don't attract youth, and very often where youth will look elsewhere, or very often will leave companies, is because they'll see there might be wonderful, inspiring values up on the wall, but we see the owners of the business and senior people in the company acting in contrary to the values on the wall. We see the outcry of things like the Shell fracking crisis and things like that nowadays. People are a lot more aware of community impact and social impact, and are willing to be a lot more vocal about it. So it is about getting that stuff right. An important one is, are we getting the basics right? Do we have proper systems in place? The way we coach businesses is we do a lot in the recruitment space and helping people with a recruitment process that we call the 4-hour recruitment system. And if you are hiring and don't know about that system, please reach out to your local coach and get some help on that. It's a process where we put traditional recruitment on its head in a simple, time-efficient way of finding the people with the right attitude. But before we hire, we've got to make sure we've got the right systems in place. Have you updated your organization chart? Have you done an updated job description, or what we like to call position contract for the employee that you're about to hire? So not just outlining what are the duties that person is going to be responsible for, but are we really clear on the attributes of the right person that we're looking for, the skills we're looking for? What are the KPIs or key performance indicators that we're going to manage that person's success on? We've got to get that right first before we then go to the market and start hiring, because how will we know the right candidate if we haven't documented first what he or she's going to look like, what the job is right? For me, it's critical, if we're doing recruitment, before we invite people to the interview, we should send them the job description. You say, listen, if you are successful, this is what the job looks like. This is what we're going to be expecting of you. This is how we're going to be managing your performance. If you don't like what you see, then excuse yourself from the process. If there's parts of it that you maybe will need some extra help, and you might need some extra mentorship or coaching or training in certain areas, then tell us about it in advance, because nobody's ever going to get the whole job right, but we need to get really clear. And that's why for me, the system is so important first, the job description, the org chart. Have we got a clear induction process? Because that's the next step, is once we've got the systems in place, now we look for the people to hire to run the systems for us. But have we got a proper hiring process in place? Have we documented a clear induction and training process so we can set that person up for success? Crystal put it so well, right? We get a new person on board. Here, there's your desk. There's a computer, off you go. And then we wonder why, a week, 2 weeks, a month later, this person isn't performing, because we haven't set them up for success. So have we got those things right? And I think an important, just a final one for me, is just to ask yourselves, those of you that already have young people on your teams, is how well are you leveraging your existing, the existing youth on your team? Have you spent time mentoring them? Have you got clarity on their long-term dreams and goals? You have some, obviously we hope that everybody joins us and they'll be with us for life, but we know that's not the case anymore. We don't live in a world where it's a job for life. Some of the research you hear out there of average stay in jobs, the averages are dropping to 1 or 2 years in some industries, where people do transition job to job. So if that is the case, we need to be aware of that and build that into our planning. So important, if you get clarity on the long-term dreams and goals of your team, let's see where they want to end up. They might be keen on being with us forever, or maybe we are just a stepping stone for that person. If somebody's only going to be with you for a year or two, wouldn't you rather know about it up front and then help set them up for success and help them go wherever they're going? Because then there's we always talk about what is the deal? You're going to give me service, I'm going to pay you money. What else are people looking for apart from salary? And if we can help people achieve their goals, and they can see us as we're not going to get in the way of that, they're much more inclined to give us real value and real value to your business in the time they are with you. So understand that. How long are we going to have somebody, but we've got to have those sort of discussions with people to say, no problem, if you are going to be leaving in 2 years to go into a different industry, to a different company, how can we help you get there? But what do we need from you? And let's be very clear on what that deal is going to be. So mentoring, what is the skills gap, and helping people bridge those skills. And importantly, are we creating an environment that's going to foster that? Are we managing our managers like that, so that our managers can then manage their team like that? Because as I mentioned earlier, management is one of the areas that a lot of people fall down. And very often the reason people don't manage well is because they're not being managed well themselves. So we're creating a culture of this inside the organization, growing people and bringing the right people on board. So that's a couple of ideas that I just wanted to share. Was the importance of hiring and growing a team in order to get a business working without you. If you are going to hire, let's take a really good solid look at the amazing talent pool. And we've got a huge, with unemployment rate in this country, specifically youth unemployment, we can't say we don't have people out there, but we've got to be clear we're looking in the right space. And importantly, do we have the proper systems on place so we'll know the right people when we find them? And are we setting them up for success? So I hope there's some ideas you guys can take away there. Harry, maybe we hand back to you, and then if you've got any other ideas to share with everybody, and then let's open it up for some feedback from more questions. I'm sure, and I know there's a number of more questions for Crystal as well. So back to you, Harry.
Thanks, Trevor, and to Crystal. I think a lot of great perspective and a lot of good ideas for us. So if you've got any questions, guys, type them into the chat box, whether it be for Trevor, whether it be for Crystal, whether it be on youth, whether it be on business. Everything goes at the moment, so no problem. And I see Peter's got his hand up, so let's go first to Peter.
Hey, Pete.
How's it, Trevor? Thanks, Crystal. Crystal, thanks for your insight into the work you do, and hats off to you people for that. It takes a special group of people to do the type of work you do. I did a lot of work with the DG Murray Trust many years ago, so I know a lot of what the work they do. I'm going to be very interested to see the results of the survey that you're putting out to business owners, because I think we've got to be careful with the approach here. And I understand that there's a lot of work that we have to do in preparing youth, be it, what are the obstacles to them getting jobs? The problem is employers create the jobs. And so your comment about getting the survey out to business owners to understand what are their obstacles to employing the youth is, I think, going to be fundamental. Because even in Action Coach, as much as we are supportive of employing youth, there's a bit of a dichotomy here for me, because on the one hand, we teach people, employ the best person you can, people that are better than you at a particular job, so that you buy yourself leverage. And that's sometimes a dichotomy when you're bringing in somebody in the youth category. And by the way, I agree with you, youth at 35, that's another debate. But bringing somebody in the youth category, and the average entrepreneur, you ask yourself the question, why don't they bring on employees? One, because their first concern, if they bring on people that they have to mentor, is that I bring on people because I haven't got enough time to do the work I have to do at the moment. If I bring on somebody that I've got to mentor, that doubles up my time. So we have a problem with getting people just to employ people. Then we have a double challenge by bringing on people, which we know we have to do. And I'm just putting out the brutal fact. We know we have to focus on the youth, but now it doubles up on my time. And I think there's going to be a clear dichotomy that we're going to have to manage. So all the schemes, be they tax relief schemes, be they whatever the case may be, and I know we've got a big problem in that in South Africa, is we've almost got to go the other way around and get rid of the bureaucracy behind the tax claims and all that, etc. Because when business owners employ youth into those schemes, they're sucking up double time already, not double, but more time. And what they don't want to have to do is to employ more time and focus around that, plus deal with the bureaucracy to get any claims back, etc. So I think it's going to be critical for us to really understand out of that survey that you people need to put out is what is currently preventing the average business owner entrepreneur from employing youth? Because at the moment, we've got a massive problem just to get them to employ people. Does that make sense?
No, it makes absolute sense, Peter. And, this is what, what I've been saying is, I think the problem in the youth unemployment space, I remember coming into it, and as I said, I came from public health, so I've been working in HIV and TB, work before this, very different space. And I was just so baffled by the very siloed approach that continues to happen now, even across government departments. Youth unemployment is across every government department. Everybody's got a role to play in some way, shape, or form. But people don't talk to each other. So exactly as you say, like I often feel like it's an echo chamber in the civil society space, because a lot of civil society space, when you talk about youth development, it's people running programs, equipping youth with skills to make them more employable. But the link to the actual employment never comes. So I think there's literally billions. I mean, the National Planning Commission did a youth labor transitions paper 2 years ago that Tessa Doones put out, like billions that go into youth development. But where does that money go? So I think there was also a stronger partnership there, because those programs should be doing the work that you're saying an employer doesn't have the time to do. I acknowledge that, agree with you, small business, and making those links between a really good program that works as a bridging course and prepares young people, so that when they come out of that, the employer goes, oh, that organization, I trust the young people that come from there. They actually got the skills that I need, the basic, work etiquette skills, managing your a simple thing like managing your finances, so you have enough money to get you to the end of the month. Things like that young people just don't have the skills to do. If I work with this specific youth development program, I get out those people at the end of it, and then I don't have to do that. So I think even those links are things that we need to do. And exactly as you say, Peter, I think we don't talk to the demand side enough, and then we end up making all these assumptions about what employers think or feel or experience without actually really engaging with the private sector. And so that's what we're hoping to do. It's, as I say, we're moving into that space. We're starting from the bottom, but I think that survey to just understand, the same way we've asked young people what their experience is, we need to ask business owners what their experience is. So couldn't agree with you.
Great stuff. I mean, I think the other comment, and it's a bit of a bugbear for me, etc., and I'll put it out there and just leave it. So I think if we allocated half the amount of money the government allocated to all the use, not to use, but to the employment initiatives, and started pumping that into engaging and allowing mid-cap SME businesses to grow, to create the employment, rather than incubator space, people, doesn't matter what we do, 95% of those businesses still fail. And start focusing on creating on the demand side of employers, so that people can employ people, let alone, importantly, youth employment as well.
Brilliant. Good. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Crystal. No other questions coming in here, but I know one that often comes up, Trevor. I'd love your insight into this, because you've coached many entrepreneurs through that, is I've got a business, I might not be able to afford the right staff, and by the time they actually get to recruitment, it's already months, sometimes even years too late. So how do I, if I'm listening to this going, yeah, I want to employ more people, I need more people, how do I build that bridge between where I am and then getting more people into my business?
Great question. Yeah, because we're all already at a different stage, because it's maybe skill, it's maybe confidence, it's often affordability. And that's why I love that quote, saving a wage can cost you a fortune. If we bring on the right people, the right person will pay their own salary time and time again. Either if it's somebody in the marketing and sales space in terms of bringing on more clients, or if they're a support role, let's call it, it'll free up the marketing team, the sales team, you, the business owner, to do some of that higher space, because we're doing the low value stuff and we're not doing the big picture space. So, I mean, the obvious point, Crystal, you were saying, let's give a plug to the workshop, the movie that you have coming up, the documentary. For me, the obvious plug is, have you got yourself a coach helping you with this stuff? It's that's what we do for a living, is we walk people through that process. Sometimes people are ready to do it right now. Sometimes we've got to get some steps in place, because even for a junior salary, sometimes for a small business, that affordability, you don't want to get somebody on and 3-4 months time, you find you can't pay their salary, because that's an awkward one for everybody. So working on marketing and sales is a great one. And by the way, guys, if anybody is on the call and not working with a coach already, Harry, maybe you could put a link there, but reach out. We've got over 40 coaches across South Africa and in Southern Africa, north of our borders now. Book a session with one of our coaches. I'm available here, and as I say, we've got coaches all over the country. book a free session and have a coach take you through a process and have you look at your business through somebody else's perspective. How ready are you? Let's look at those basics in place. Maybe you should have hired last week already, or maybe there's a couple of steps that we should be putting in place. But in particular, something to be looking at, and any coach you sit with, is ask about the recruitment process. I think that's one of the areas I just find we get some amazing results with our clients. Is most entrepreneurs have never been trained. I mean, if I ask most of you on the call, who is a degreed or qualified in human relations and knows that space well, and have you ever been trained how to hire? And too often we find is we people do hire, they put the wrong bum in the wrong seat, and it's not fun for the business owner, and it's equally not fun for the employee. And we wonder why there's that mismatch. So if you need some help in that space, do reach out, and obviously reach out to Crystal and learn the stuff. It gets easier when we learn how.
Brilliant. And thanks, Crystal. I see you answered Mariette's question there just about, the overlap and what the YDP program is as part of the National Youth Development Agency. I've also put a link there, not just for the complimentary coaching session to see if you qualify, but also for resources, because I've been having a few messages privately sent on the chat, and your business is at the level where you might not be able to take on a coach. Well, what do I do? Well, the first thing you do is you make sure you don't miss any of these, and you go back to the recordings of all the previous ones so that you gain knowledge. Because the sad reality, and this drives me insane, we like to claim Elon Musk as one of our own. So here we've got a South African doing great stuff in the world, and the richest man currently in the world. The second richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, and the two of them are in a Mars race. We're looking to send people to Mars. Brilliant. But we still don't teach people how to run businesses. We go into a business where we've got a skill, where we've got a passion, where we can make the product, where we can deliver the service, but all the other elements we don't know. And the only way you get to know those things are through learning. So you need to gain the knowledge, and we say, good old internal action coach joke, the only place you'll find earn before learn is in the dictionary. It's first the learning, then the earning. So whether it be these entrepreneurship series, whether it be on our YouTube channel or YouTube in general, TED Talks, whatever you need to do to gather information. If you follow that resources link to our website, you'll see that there's a business plan and marketing plan template you can download. There's different white papers on how to do different things. Because the reality is, as an entrepreneur, it is the most privileged, I think, role you can play in society. It is relatively simple when you break it down, but it's damn hard. And it's not easy. And we need to force the way to take a step back from the business and look at it more holistically. And that's definitely what we're doing kind of with this series. So Trevor, let's talk the opposite. We've been talking a lot about a lot of the challenges. We've been talking about a lot of the ways to go about employing people and specifically focusing on the youth. Let's talk from your experience, some success stories you've seen where people have actually had interns, had youth, had new staff come into their business, and it's just revolutionized their organizations.
Well, one of my favorites actually was, let's talk the principle first of how to hire. One of my favorite success stories is are we briefing the candidates right? Because too often we find businesses, and that's why I say get some advice on recruitment process. Still use recruitment companies for candidates, and you can get your candidates in many different ways. But a solid, robust recruitment process is such an important one, because how often do you find it where people go for a job interview, and the cliche or the stereotype I like to give is we go to a job interview at a head office somewhere, or at a recruitment company's head office, and it's up on Umhlanga Ridge or in Sandton, and it's this beautiful chrome and glass office with a view and beautiful coffee machines, and we interview for a job and it looks amazing, and the person takes the job, they get accepted to the job, and they say, no, but you're not coming here, you're going across town to, you're not in this, you're in a branch across town, and you're working in this rubbish rundown branch that's, and the boss you get handed to isn't even the person you interviewed. You gelled so nicely with the person you interviewed, and now you get put with what kind of monster is now this boss for you, and you think, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've resigned from a really good job. So you got to interview in the place. So wherever the person is going to work, that's where the interview should be. You know, if they're going to be in a factory floor, that's where the interview should be. If they're going to be in a fancy, cozy office in a beautiful upstairs from a Starbucks, brilliant. Then interview in the Starbucks, but let them see where they're going to be. Bring in a couple of the colleagues. So we do a panel interview where they can meet not just the person they're working for, but a couple of the managers, a couple of the team. Because, you know, you want to give people as much information as possible so that they don't make the wrong decision. Because if they make the wrong decision and come and join you, 1 month, 2 months later, they're going to update their CV and they're going to scrap. And now what we're going to do, we're going to start interviewing all over again. So being very clear on the expectations. And a lovely case study for me is what revolutionized. It's an old client of mine here in Durban, actually, a construction business. And this chap was working, good grief, 7 days a week. He was up at 6 or 5:30 every morning. And, you know, anybody that works in the construction game, you know what it's like. You got to get your crews ready for the day and they pack their tools. And off you go. The crews are on site, and he'd be working late every evening, and working from home office. And he was burning out, not making money, not paying bills, and not finding any time with his family. So I was pushing him to get a solid right-hand admin person that was going to just obviously free up time, because he was doing most of the admin himself, the bookkeeping himself, the job cards. He was really burning out. So we did the group interview. We got a couple of favorite candidates, our favorite 3 candidates, and I facilitated the interview myself, the client, his wife on the interview, and one of his foremen. And we just a nice discussion, get to know each other. And obviously you still do more intensive one-to-one interviews separately, but there's more a get to know you, because we want to find fit of the right person. And before we had the candidates introduce themselves, I obviously have the owner of the business introduce himself, and then I have each team member introduce. And every team member would say, you know, this is my name, this is what I do here, this is what I like working about, this is what I like about this company, this is what I don't like about this company. Because you want to give people the good news and the bad news. No, don't just give the fake good stuff. Every business has got good and bad stuff. And then I asked each of them to say, what is going to be the primary KPI or the determinant of success in this person? I remember my client's wife stood up, and she was quite a reserved person. She doesn't often speak out a lot. And she stood up and said, listen, I will tell you, you know, even though it's not my business, I still am involved in decisions in this business. And for me, the main factor, whichever of you ladies get the job, she says, I will know that you're doing a good job, is that my husband starts coming home in daylight hours, and my husband starts having dinner with the family every evening, and he starts attending the girls' school events, the daughters. If that is not happening in the next 3 months and I don't get my husband back, I will ask him to fire you, and I'll ask him to hire somebody else. And how is that for a clear 1-point KPI or key performance indicator on the success of their job? And we obviously put a lot of other stuff in place in his business, but it was quite phenomenal in terms of turning around profitability, getting proper analysis on the business. I mean, even to this day now, his business has grown substantially. What happened in that business, half the revenue tripled the profits. Because the main thing is, he was freeing up time, but importantly, he was doing the top level analysis in the business. He was getting to look at his costings, looking at his margin, at every project, being able to do a post-mortem on every project and actually see, was I actually profitable on that project? And we uncovered all sorts of pricing issues and buying issues, and the amount of systems we could put in place to both free up time but increase profitability at the same time was astonishing. So he now works a regular working day and takes care of his kids. He's at all of his kids' school events and making more money than ever. And that one hire was one of the most instrumental parts in that process. So there's plenty of case studies like that, but that's one that I still really get excited about, Harry.
Brilliant. So she got to keep her job because he did go home at a normal hour. So I think a couple of last comments from my side, then we'll take a closing wrap up from Trevor, and then we'll let you get on with your day. So I have a recruitment company client, and the lady that runs the company, she started the company after she was retrenched, applied for 200 positions and didn't hear from one person. And the reality is, if we look at what we face all day, every day, you've got businesses that want people, that are looking for people, and then you've got the country with the highest unemployment in the world almost. And you go like, how the bridge is broken. And what I took from Crystal's session was we have to be aware of that and work harder and be more persistent in the first place. But But when it comes to recruitment, I think there's two rules of thumb. That's kind of counter logic that I want to leave with you is if you can afford half the salary, employ the person. Because exactly what Trevor was saying, by them joining the business, either in time that they're going to save you or in money that they're going to make you, they should make up the other half. And the beauty is they start on the 1st and you only have to pay them between the 25th and the 31st. So you've got a few weeks of runway. So if you can afford half, employ the person. The other reality that I don't think anybody does is if you have a need in your business, whether it is a junior person, whether it's an intern, whether it's a youth, or whether it's a rocket scientist, doesn't matter what position. If you have a need, go recruiting. Because I don't have to employ the person tomorrow. It's going to take a few weeks to wade through CVs. It's going to take a few weeks to go through interviews. Then I'm going to make an offer. They might have to take notice or whatever. But I could find the right candidate, employ them, give them an offer at the end of June, but their starting date is only the 1st of December. There's no law against that. It doesn't have to always be immediate, because what that does is give them time to get prepared, but it gives me time to get prepared. It also ensures that as a company, I'm recruiting when the potential person might be in the market, because when I'm recruiting, they might not be in the market for a position. So if you have a need, recruit. You don't have to appoint them within the next 2 weeks. And what it often does is if I've given somebody an employment contract, a letter of offer, and said, even if I've got 1, 2, 3, 6 months before they start, it puts me in the business under pressure to do what we need to do to be ready, to be able to afford the salary. And I think the other reality that does too is they can do a lot of onboarding over a longer period of time, which is important. I think we as an organization have seen this. Trevor's used it in his business. We've seen many coaches, and in our own offices, we've seen that youth have come in. We had a marketing assistant a few years ago. It was only her second ever job. She studied marketing. She ended up in a recruitment company. They had her doing recruiting instead of marketing, and she was literally there for 9 months, and she joined us as a junior. She went from marketing assistant to marketing manager to business development manager, then moved to Australia, New Zealand, and ran ActionCOACH's marketing department for Anzac, and is today a business coach. All because she had the right attitude and we created the right environment for her. And we've seen many of those success stories that are possible. So everything Trevor's been talking about, everything Crystal's been talking about is doable. So Trev, last closing comments from your side.
I think you've hit it on the head. I like that tip that you gave. I like to use the word looking but not looking. I think as every business owner, if you're building, but you should always have your eye out, because what often happens is we need to hire, but we want to hire today, right? So we get taken by surprise, an unexpected resignation. So now we quickly put an ad out in the newspaper or however we advertise, we go online, and we expect to find the perfect candidate that suits the job, just happens to be looking on the same day that we happen to start advertising for the job. Now, statistically, what is the likelihood of those two windows of opportunity aligning? We should always have feelers out. Maybe once a month, do an interview. Do you have a landing page on your website where you can just be harvesting applications? Whenever you have good people, keep them on file. So whenever we do need to look again, there's a file you could go to, because chances are a lot of those people that you interviewed a year ago might still be available, or they might have moved to a job that they were miserably unhappy in, and they bite your arm off when you tell them that that you are looking again. So yeah, keep open to it, and yeah, every success. Let's do some great stuff this year.
Brilliant. So thanks to everybody for joining. Important that next month, July session, we're going to be talking about legacy. How are you building your business for your own personal legacy first and foremost, and then potentially a bigger legacy. August, we'll be having our Thriving Women's Entrepreneurship Summit, our 3rd annual summit, and already have 3 fantastic outside speakers lined up. We're also going to be having some clients telling their success stories. We're going to be having some coaches sharing theirs. So that will be a longer 3-hour Friday morning event. So the important thing is this: nobody is going to fix your business except you. And it's a harsh reality. Government says they will help and support, good luck. The banks will say that they will help and support, good luck. We each have to take responsibility for our own business, acquire the knowledge, and most importantly, that's why our company is called ActionCOACH. It's not maybe tomorrow, coach. It's not when the petrol price goes down, coach. It's not when things get easier, coach. It's ActionCOACH for a reason. So get the resources, apply for one of the complimentary sessions. And thanks to Trevor and to Crystal, you've been brilliant. We look forward to seeing you all again next month on the Entrepreneurship series. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheerio. Bye-bye.